This is Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
I'm the only lawyer ever to obtain a court ruling that a president of the United States committed a crime.
For truth. For competition.
As a young lawyer, I helped break up AT&T. That's why you have all your cell phones today.
For sovereignty. For the Republic.
I'm the guy who, at Judicial Watch, which I founded, uncovered the Chinagate scandal. Millions of dollars going to the Clinton campaign, corrupting our political system.
For the privacy of citizens.
And I'm the only guy to have enjoined the National Security Agency from mass surveillance on hundreds of millions of Americans.
Tearing it up.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
Bringing it back.
We're going to take this country apart and put it back together again in the way envisioned by our founding fathers.
It's not just talk.
We're not just regurgitating news stories. Larry Klayman, special prosecutor, is making the news.
And now, here's Larry.
Welcome to this week's edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. A lot of important events unfolding as we speak. We're going to have later on in the show, in our third segment, we're going to have Laura Loomer, that patriotic activist who's taken on a lot of hard causes, has gotten a lot of hard knocks from the left as a result of it, as well as John Moseley, a very fine lawyer who worked with me at Judicial Watch, works with me now, who has prepared a deportation petition on behalf of Freedom Watch with regard to Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, that radical Muslim, so vehemently anti-Semitic. Apparently, she married her brother, committed immigration fraud. Just this week, she proposed national holidays for Muslim events. I hope that 9/11 isn't one of them. So we're going to be talking about that because in this country today, there is a tendency, if someone uses the race card to deflect, to not do anything. But we're all equal in this country. None of us are above the law. And Representative Ilhan Omar, if in fact she committed immigration fraud, she was a naturalized citizen, should be deported from this country, and good riddance if that's the case. But I want to talk first about the Mueller report that's coming out apparently next week, the so-called witch hunt, the so-called Russian collusion, obstruction of justice report. Clearly, that is likely to trigger impeachment in the House of Representatives, in the Pelosi-controlled chamber over there. You've got the likes of Adam Schiff. We've opened an investigation about him into his finances. I suspect we'll find something. Preliminary results say he owns some very expensive homes in both Maryland and in California. And how can he do that on a congressman's salary? Before that, he was district attorney. That's a big question. We're going to be looking into that. You know, if it's good enough for the president to have his underwear inspected, then let's look into Adam Schiff's underwear. By the way, he's the congressman from West Hollywood, so perhaps he knows something about that. But in any event, let's also talk about what's going on with regard to Mueller and impeachment, because clearly that's going to go over to the Senate. There'll be a trial. The Democrats are already trying to disrupt the president in a major way. They've been doing that, of course, for 2 years. But the president, as he travels to Hanoi, Vietnam, frankly, I don't know why Hanoi, Vietnam was picked. Very bad symbolism, but one can only hope. But as he travels there next week to meet with Chairman Kim of North Korea to try to advance the ball on denuclearization in the Korean Peninsula, the Democrats are calling, you guessed it, Michael Cohen, that sleazy, disgusting lawyer that represented the president, that has turned so-called state's evidence, that's trying to incriminate the president to get himself off the hook with, large felony charges to get a lesser sentence, that he'll be testifying in front of the House of Representatives. And that is obviously an attempt to disrupt the president's negotiations with North Korea to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. It's not patriotic, it is traitorous. And in fact, these Democrats have become so vile, so disgusting. I'm nonpartisan. I've voted for Democrats in the past. I voted for Bill Nelson in Florida way back when because he was the only one responsive who wanted to do anything to help a client of mine earnestly. I didn't pay him anything and didn't ask him to do anything by doing favors. He just did it. So I voted for Democrats. But I'll tell you something, the Democratic Party today, and I don't say who I vote for because, it's not the right thing to do. I'm nonpartisan. But these Democrats have just become vicious. They're nothing more than Bolsheviks. They think that they're going to take this country down and reconstruct it in the image of Karl Marx, this march to socialism, this march to radical Islam with Ilhan Omar. You've got, of course, Cortez, who's pushing socialism. Bernie Sanders comes out this week running for the Democratic nomination for president and openly embraces socialism. Who does he pick as his campaign manager? Obviously, it was a Muslim. Okay, well, you know what? They're good Muslims and they're bad Muslims. But the reality is he did that. So-called Bernie did that to curry favor with the Muslim community because they have banded with radical atheists, radical blacks, radical feminists, radical anti-illegal immigrant people. Actually, they're for illegal immigration. We know that. And this is the intent, is that these groups are banding together, the radical elements of those groups, to take down this country. And we are in a war. We're facing that war. So we at Freedom Watch, and go to freedomwatchusa.org, we are doing everything we can peacefully and legally to prevent that. And that includes filing a request for a deportation investigation and deportation of Representative Ilhan Omar. This person is so hateful that she has not only advocated nations joining, including the United States, an anti-Israel boycott to bring Israel to its knees, the cradle of Jesus Christ, the cradle of Moses, the cradle of King David, the cradle of our Judeo-Christian heritage, upon which this country's Declaration of Independence and Constitution was based. This was Judeo-Christian law. That's what we go under. And she wants Sharia law to take hold. And of course, we know what happens in Sharia law is that gays, lesbians, transgenders, they're killed. I mean, that's a fact, but no one talks about that. We talk about the other injustices. Under Sharia law and under the Quran, it's perfectly okay to lie to advance the mission of the so-called religion. And that's not in dispute. Just read the Quran. I'm going to put this up on our website. So the fact that Cortez has lied with regard to immigration issues, marrying her brother, and by the way, Muhammad married his daughter, his 7-year-old daughter. So it's obviously something which is not unusual in the Islamic faith, that she would lie. She needs to be held accountable, and everybody needs to be held accountable. I don't care whether you're white, red, black, green, or purple, is that we are a country of laws, not of men, as John Adams said, and we need to be held accountable. And frankly, this country would be better off without Ilhan Omar being a naturalized citizen. Years ago, I filed a petition to look into Obama's fraudulent birth certificate because this is something that should have been held accountable for. That petition still sits at the Department of Homeland Security. It's never been ruled upon. It's never even been responded to. We have a political correctness in this country that says that if you're a minority, this is the way it's become. You're above the law. You can virtually do anything you want. Well, it can't be that way. It has to be that we're all equal. We're all the same. And I'm a minority. I'm a Jewish Christian. I don't hold Jews to a higher or a lower threshold of doing anything than anybody else in this country. We need to be held accountable just like everybody else needs to be held accountable. When the Jewish mafia was ruling the school in Miami with Meyer Lansky, he was held accountable. And when the Italian mafia did the same thing in Las Vegas and elsewhere, they were held accountable. So minorities need to be held accountable. And if they think they can get away with stuff, and of course we see what's happening with this guy Jesse Smollett in Chicago, who staged this false attack against himself, called it a hate crime so he could boost his popularity and his salary and everything else. It's being reversed. And don't expect anything to happen to good old Jesse. He's been removed from the Fox television show for the time being. Don't expect him to go to jail. Don't expect Louis Farrakhan to go to jail, who ordered the hit of Malcolm X many years ago, who encouraged his followers to kill the cops in Dallas 5 years ago. I sued so-called Reverend Farrakhan and Reverend Sharpton, who himself staged a phony hate crime many years ago. Black Lives Matter. Judges out there, black and white, dismiss the cases because they don't want to confront these issues. They're afraid probably that violence will inure towards them. But we cannot be afraid. Our founding fathers were not afraid. They pledged their fortune. They risked their lives to form a new nation. We cannot be afraid in the face of tyranny. And that's what I practice and what I try to preach at Freedom Watch, and before that at Judicial Watch. I am not afraid, because unless we stand up for the vision of our founding fathers that we're all equal, one nation under God, with indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, we're not going to have a nation much longer. So we must confront the radical forces of the left who have banded together to destroy this country, a la Atlas Shrugged of Ayn Rand, a la 1984 of George Orwell. All predicted that it would happen. Jefferson predicted that someday we'd face another revolution. I'm trying to stave off a violent revolution. I want to do it peacefully and legally, and that's why go to freedomwatchusa.org. Support our citizens' grand juries. The American people can rise up. We can take matters into our own legal hands, peacefully and legally. We can bring these criminals to justice, but we cannot be afraid. We have God behind us. We have the Judeo-Christian God behind us. And we have gods of other legitimate monotheistic religions behind us. You know, I'm a Christian. I'm not supposed to say that. But I respect other religions as long as they believe in peace and as long as they are monotheistic and they're not worshiping idols. You know, as Abraham found out was not a good idea in the Bible, to put it mildly. So we need to rise up, and we need to enforce the rule of law, and we cannot be afraid. And I cannot say that more and more and more. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Support our cause with tax-deductible contributions. We need to ramp up. We need to hire more lawyers. We need to hire more investigators. We need to do more media to get the word out. We need your help. Sign up for our cause. I'm going to be right back with the second segment of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Fearless.
He's claiming he's crazy, he's racist, he's out to kill the Democrats.
Dangerous.
You don't care, he uses the court and the law.
Lethal.
This is bad.
Special Prosecutor
Very bad.
Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
The reason we need to get the word out, and I do this through a number of people such that you're going to hear on the third segment of this show, who actually tell the truth, who tell it like it is, who are unafraid, is because what you see on cable news, I don't care what channel you're watching, whether it's MSNBC, who Mark Levin calls MSLSD, or whether it's CNN, the Communist News Network, or whether it's Fox News Network, which frankly has just become an entertainment show with Hannity and Tucker Carlson and the rest of them, you're not getting the unvarnished truth. And what we've seen in Fox News lately, because, Fox News is controlled by the Murdoch sons, and they are liberals. They are leftists. Rupert Murdoch, the dad, he's nothing. He's just there for making money. And he realized that there was a large conservative audience that could be milked over these years. He used the corrupt Roger Ailes to do it. But they really don't have any views. It's called marketing. And you're starting to see that right now with the trashing of President Trump for his emergency order with regard to building the wall on our southern border. You see people like Chris Wallace, who is, a leftist in disguise. He wears a somewhat conservative skirt, but, pick up the skirt and you'll find a leftist. Or Judge Andrew Napolitano, who's been trashing Trump, not just with regard to the wall, but even put down this lawsuit that was brought by these kids who were discriminated against on the mall many weeks ago. These good kids, these good Catholic Christian kids. Napolitano, I think, is mad that Trump never gave him a job in the administration. You have others like Shepard Smith. And so Fox is moving left, and Fox shades the truth. The Fox never wanted to report on the Cliven Bundy case after he became a pariah. Cliven simply equated his plight to the plight of the Negro in the Old South. The word Negro was used by Muhammad Ali. The word Negro was used by Martin Luther King. It's not a dirty word. Blacks later wanted to be called blacks. Then they wanted to be called African Americans. Fine. Respect their wishes on that. But Cliven didn't mean any harm. But when that happened, Hannity and Fox ran away from Bundy. And you saw, except for one report done by William LaJeunesse, who is a good man, works in the LA Bureau of Fox, there was nothing ever reported about the Bundy case since then. You didn't see anything reported about Sheriff Joe Arpaio after he was unfairly found liable for a misdemeanor with regard to Hispanic profiling in Arizona. He didn't do anything wrong, but you had this very negative, hateful judge who issued this order against him named Murray Snow. He provoked it through another judge in that courthouse. Fox ran away from Arpaio. Fox ran away from Judge Roy Moore, who's a good Christian man. I know him for many years. He didn't sexually harass any women. In fact, those cases are moving forward in Alabama, and you're going to see that that's the case very, very shortly. He even took a lie detector test. None of the women would take a lie detector test. And I'm for women's rights. A friend of mine is Gloria Allred. Okay, I don't think that means that I have to agree with everything that goes on that is happening. But there are liberals out there who I respect, but I don't respect women who come forward that make false charges. And unfortunately, that happens more often than not in today's world. There are legitimate cases, and those should be prosecuted, such as with Harvey Weinstein and others. But you see, Fox News shies away from those things, and that's why this show is so important. This show, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, or call it Special Defense Counsel with Larry Klayman, because I've become more and more a criminal defense lawyer over the years with clients that I believe in, like Cliven Bundy, like Schaefer Cox, who's in a prison in Indiana. Similar situation to the Bundys. We have to stand up against the Department of Injustice. I was once a proud alumnus of the Department of Justice. It's become the Department of Injustice. And nothing's going to change with the nomination and confirmation of Attorney General William Barr. He's a rhino Republican. He had to get down on his knees to Robert Mueller and say, he's one of my best friends. My wife goes to Bible study with his wife. I think he's a man of integrity. Well, you know what? He's not a man of integrity. There are very few men of integrity in Washington, D.C. I put up on our website the other day an alligator killing a snake in the swamp of Florida. And I said, this is the swamp in D.C. And it is. It has become a partisan witch hunt on every front. And consequently, we need to stand up ourselves. So go to freedomwatchusa.org. Support our cause. Support the Cliven Bundy Defense Fund. Go to clivenbundydefensefund.org. This case is now on appeal. Cliven could do life imprisonment if things don't go well, if we don't win that appeal and it goes back to trial and he's convicted of phony crimes. So we need your help. I'm going to be right back with our guests, John Moseley and Laura Loomer, to talk about the whole situation with Ilhan Omar and other situations similar to that in the United States where we need to stand up, where we need equal justice. I'll be right back.
And now, 4 words that make corrupt politicians make wee-wee in their little pants.
Transparency and the rule of law will be the touchstones of this presidency.
But we have to pass the bill so that you can find out what is in it.
Special Prosecutor Larry Klayman.
Be the one who makes our country great again. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and donate.
I'm back with my good friend and colleague, John Moseley, a very fine lawyer who worked with me, as I said, when I ran Judicial Watch, which I founded, and also works with me at Freedom Watch. He helps prepare briefs and other things like that. Very studious person. He's prepared a petition, a deportation petition, with regard to radical Muslim Ilhan Omar of Minnesota. And I have Laura Loomer, that very brave conservative activist who takes on hard causes and tries to educate the American people using humor, which is very important. I'm a frustrated stand-up comic. I never have the opportunity to fulfill that. I'm also a photographer, and I don't get to do that either because I'm wrapped up in all these lawsuits and legal causes. But I want to introduce both of you to Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. And I want to talk with John first so he can explain. And we're going to be filing this petition later today with the Department of Homeland Security, which now subsumes the U.S. Immigration and Naturalization Service. John, explain, take about 5 minutes to do it. This is a 15-minute segment. what this deportation entails and why you prepared it at my direction.
Well, Ilhan Omar's family history is a bit murky, but some things are, which is in itself problematic, but some of the things are clear. There's some tremendous journalist work, independent of us, that out in Minnesota that have established that that Ilhan Omar married her. Well, first she married the father of her children, Hersey. Then she married her brother. She disputes that it's her brother, but doesn't give any details. There seems to be no doubting the links to Mr. Elmi. And while still married to Hersey, and he was not a U.S. citizen, and this was purely for the purpose of sponsoring him as a U.S. citizen. First of all, that is marriage fraud. That is immigration marriage fraud. It's punishable by 5 years in prison and up to $250,000 fine. We don't know the basis of her naturalization to the United States, but she's been, with all this suspicion, we'd like to have the entire thing looked into. The fact that she committed this crime alone could be grounds to revoke her citizenship. But the more we've looked into this, there's a lot of difficult issues. We're asking for more investigation. She's resisting information about this and giving inconsistent information. She's either one of 7 children, 6 children, 5 children, in one case 4 children, and doesn't explain this. Much of the controversy has to do with the naming conventions in the Somali culture, but they pretty much nailed down that the Elmi in the word demonstrates that that this is her brother that she sponsored. She then said she left with him, but really didn't. The social media indicates that it was really a sham marriage. She remained married to Mr. Hersey while just pretending to be married to her brother for immigration fraud. But there's other issues too. She was a refugee from the war in Somalia and then went to Mombasa, Kenya. Now, I coincidentally happen to know that Mombasa is a resort town. It's one of the most beautiful beaches in the area. It's not exactly, it's like being a refugee in the Riviera or something, or Malibu or something like that. She then came to the United States. Well, she doesn't qualify to come to the United States after already being in a safe country and no longer under threat. So her refugee application to the United States almost certainly must contain fraudulent statements and false information. It was the whole family, but the statutes do indicate that if the family didn't qualify, you can question the child. She then came to Arlington, Virginia for several years, went to Minnesota where Obama relocated a lot of Somalis. It's been a hothead of terrorism. They say that more young men go from that area of Minnesota to ISIS, Somali men, than anywhere else in the country. And she actually advocated for some Minnesota Somalis that were caught at the border going to fight with ISIS. And she interceded for them as a state legislature and slightly before, and said they shouldn't be punished for going to sign up for ISIS. So her involvement in terrorism and ISIS, either active involvement or just material support, is, I think, another grounds that one can be deported. If membership in certain organizations, when someone applies, could disqualify them. There's a law that says if they subsequently, within 5 years, join one of these organizations that disqualifies them, their citizenship can be canceled retroactively. And it's not 5 years from when the action is brought. It's 5 years from when their membership in the organization began. So this requires more investigation than usual because she's being very, very evasive. And some of the journalists have taken down information. The other journalists have pointed out how there's sort of this active effort to hide all of these details, that some of the key details disappear from online news articles and that kind of thing. But we believe this all needs to be investigated, and there's substantial reason to indicate that her citizenship, at least her brother's citizenship, and immigration fraud is at issue. And, of course, she's become quite famous for her anti-Semitic comments and attitude, which legally tends to support the idea that she's a member of some of these, member, not like a card-carrying member necessarily, but she's participating in some of these prohibited organizations that would affect her immigration status.
John, well done. We're going to let the facts be proven on their own. There needs to be an investigation here for sure. I'm going to bring in Laura right now. Laura, what do you know about Representative Ilhan Omar? You've yourself, have been punished for speaking out about her.
Yes, I have. All of this information that he just listed, of course, is information that I already told you 7 months ago on your show when I was on the ground in Minnesota. I remember very well calling you from the Minnesota airport in Minneapolis and telling you these things, that now all the members of the mainstream media and different organizations are acting as if this is new, shocking information. But in fact, the investigation has been done already, and I'm currently driving in Minneapolis right now with my friend Jacob Wall, another great Jewish conservative. And we just attempted to serve Ilhan Omar with a sworn affidavit, under a penalty of perjury, saying that she, in fact, never married her biological siblings, including her brother. And what we found is that her home was vacant, the address that was listed when she filed the paperwork. Her office was also vacant, and the number that you call doesn't even go to a legitimate congressional voicemail. And so this goes along with everything that I've been warning people about for the last year or so. Throughout my investigation into Ilhan Omar, is that this woman not only committed immigration fraud by marrying her brother, not only is she associated with and tied to terrorist organizations like the Council on American Islamic Relations, which lobbied Twitter behind the scenes to get me banned for a tweet in which I said that Ilhan was anti-Jewish, something that is now fact and even confirmed by Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, if I might add, right?
Well, let me add, Laura, let me interject here. You didn't make that statement about Care idly. They were named as an unindicted co-conspirator in a Holy Land Foundation criminal prosecution in Dallas many years ago. Now, George W. Bush was afraid of this. He didn't want to deal with it, his Justice Department. But it's a reality that his own Justice Department named them as an unindicted co-conspirator tied to terrorist interests.
Yeah, no, that is correct. And what I find to be interesting is just kind of like the death of journalism in this country. Why is it that, I was not only banned from Twitter, but ignored, called a neo-Nazi, called alt-right, ignored for trying to warn America about the jihadist who is now trying to promote Sharia and Islamification in the halls of Congress, right? Calling for the eradication of Israel and doing the most obscene things on our taxpayer dollars as the first Muslim woman elected to Congress. Now we have all these Johnny-come-latelys who want to act as if, this is new information. And I just find it to be really insulting to the profession of journalism and really insulting to our country. That there's such disdain and lack of interest and just such apathy towards these things when people are on the ground shoving it in your face, investigating it nearly a year ago. But now it's too late, right? Now it's too late because this Muslim woman, this jihadist, is serving in Congress. And so, I would really encourage people to really put their money where their mouth is and support people like myself and Jacob, who are now on the ground investigating Ilhan Omar, continuing work I did 7 months ago as well, and really trying to get her on video to sign this sworn affidavit, because really at the end of the day, that's going to put this all to rest, right? If she really does think it's rumors and conspiracies, then she will have no problem signing a sworn affidavit, right, Larry?
Laura, there's an interesting twist here, though. She shouldn't be a congressman for sure, and it's embarrassment, to put it mildly, to her district, because there are good Muslims out there, but not her. Okay, and she does want to destroy Israel. She is tied in with groups that want the destruction of Israel. She is in favor of the anti-Israel boycott and is propagating that with others, radical Democrats in Congress primarily. And just this week, she proposed that there be federal holidays for Muslims for their holidays. I just wonder if 9/11 is going to be one of them. I mean, frankly, in her case. So this is a serious threat, not just to Israel, but to this country. But she is raising the profile of what exists currently, not just in Minnesota, but elsewhere in this country, where certain minorities are getting a free pass. And I said at the outset of this show, whether you're Jewish, Muslim, or whatever, you are the same under the law. These individuals play the race card. The journalists, the judges, everybody else run away from it. They're afraid themselves about their safety, and nothing ever happens. And you're sticking your neck out, and I'm sticking my neck out, and John's sticking his neck out. And that's what our founding fathers did. is that we cannot be afraid. That's what I'm saying, is because these groups are banding together to destroy this country. And
yeah, Larry, I agree with you on everything you said, but I have to stop you on one point. When you referred to her as a minority, I am sick and tired, not only as a fact-based journalist, but also as a Jewish American in this country, of Muslims being referred to as minorities. There are nearly 2 billion Muslims on this planet, and there are only 15 million Jews left worldwide. If anybody's a minority, it's me. It's not Ilhan Omar, and so we need to stop bending over backwards for these Muslim women in Congress who want to try to use this appeal of being a so-called minority, a victim, and this perpetual sense of victimhood they have to try to get their hijabs worn in Congress. How come the Jews in Congress, which there's 15 million Jews, 2 billion Muslims, how come no one ever allowed for the Jews to wear the kippahs or yarmulkes in the halls of Congress, right? Why is it that we always have to bend over backwards for Muslims in this country? Do the math, Larry. Anyone with a brain can do the math and see for themselves. 2 billion.
No, I agree with you. I'm talking about how they play that card. Okay, they are a minority in this country, and they play that card as the victim. I was going through pre-clearance at the airport the other day. I've said this before, and pre-clearance, I have clear, which they have my fingerprints, TSA, they have my eye prints, and the guy pulls me aside, the TSA agent, and he starts inspecting everything around me. I said, well, why do I have pre-clearance? Why do I have clear? I suspect that if I was a Muslim, you wouldn't do this, right? And he says, you know what? You're right, Mr. Klayman. He said, I don't understand this either. This is what I'm asked to do. And random shakedowns, okay? And I don't agree with it. He says, I agree with you completely. And that's where we are today. Years ago, I was going through Paris after 9/11, and there was a Muslim guy reading a paper in Arabic, and I wound up getting the shakedown, and he walked right through, right after 9/11, Delta. And I said, we're all treated equally, check us all out. Okay, but don't discriminate, because there's a fear against going against Muslims that there's going to be a backlash, as there is other minorities in this country, including, and Laura, we are a minority in this country as Jews. And the reality is that some groups are treated differently than others. Jews aren't, unfortunately, treated the same way. But this is something that needs to be addressed, and you need to be clear about it, because this political correctness is destroying our country.
Yeah, and I have to add, we have rising amounts of anti-Semitism in this country, and I'm pulling up right now to this immigration center here in Minnesota, and the whole place, it's just full of women walking around in burqas and hijabs here. It looks like Somalia. So, not only is this a problem.
Well, Laura, I'm going to have to. I understand what you're saying. Unfortunately, we're out of time. We're going to bring you back. You're a very brave person, and thank you, John, for your insight. I'll be right back with the verdict section of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman.
Before he was a trial lawyer, he sliced him and diced him.
People used to ask me, Larry, what caused you to start Judicial Watch and now Freedom Watch, given the powerful forces in this country that put you at risk?
In a meat packing plant.
I'm the son of meat packers in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I know how to slice and dice.
A very special prosecutor, Larry Klayman.
If you'd like to support Freedom Watch and this radio show, go to freedomwatchusa.org.
I'm back with the verdict. The verdict is that we, the American people, as I've said before, need to rise up peacefully and legally. We need to respect everybody in this country, but we also demand that they respect us. And when they don't respect us, and when they violate our rights, and when they threaten us, then we need to take action. And I can't say it enough. We cannot be afraid. Our founding fathers were not afraid. And today, we have a bunch of sissies running around there in Washington, D.C., who are more intent on stuffing money into their pockets and, pounding their chest and becoming so-called famous, the new American nobility, who think they're above the law, and the rest of us, peasants be damned. So we need to rise up. We need to use our citizens' grand juries. We need to commission grand juries in an appropriate way, not skewed, but neutral. We need to indict the criminals. We need to try them. We need to have them sentenced. And we need to have those sentences enforced peacefully and legally. And that's what's so important about what we're doing at Freedom Watch. You know, this week we found out, confirmed, not the first time, through former FBI Director Andrew McCabe, that he and that despicable human being by the name of Rod Rosenstein. You see, Rosenstein's Jewish, but he doesn't get a free pass from me because he's Jewish. The Jewish left is very destructive in this country. I want most people to know, as I said before, Laura will tell you that too, that most Jewish people are not that way. But this guy's not going to get a free pass because he can use the minority card. He hasn't tried it yet, but I'm sure he will, that he participated in a conspiracy to wage a coup d'etat against the president of the United States by wiring himself and entrapping the president to get him to say something that could be used to have the cabinet vote the president out of power on the grounds of instability or whatever. And we need to hold all these people accountable. Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, James Comey, who was part of this conspiracy, the general counsel of the FBI, James Baker, and this runaway Department of Injustice, because the FBI is part of the Department of Injustice, along with Ain Justice, you know, have also done a number on the Bundys. They've done a number on Schaefer Cox, a bright star who uncovered a pedophilia ring in Alaska, and state and federal officials who were profiting from selling sex with underage Eskimo boys. Once that happened, they set him up and they convicted him for 33 years with entrapments with informants, dishonest informants who later wrote books to profit from it. People like Bill Fulton, who we've sued in a Dallas federal court. And then this week we have Jeffrey Epstein, who was convicted of sex with underage minor children, one of the best friends of Bill Clinton, not coincidentally. And Clinton was part of that too. And the Justice Department prosecutors covered that up. That's out there right now. They didn't even inform the victims of their plea agreement, their sweetheart plea with Epstein. So, you know, this is rampant. The injustice in this country is being perpetrated by our own Department of Injustice. And that's why you must go to freedomwatchusa.org. Support our hard-hitting cases with tax-deductible contributions. We need to get bigger. We are your People's Justice Department. Go to the Cliven Bundy Defense Fund. We're defending him with the prospect that he could do life imprisonment if this matter is sent back to trial and the decision of the lower court to dismiss the indictment is reversed. We need help with that. We need help with our land case. I represent Cliven in his private capacity because we're asking that the land be declared owned by the people of the state of Nevada, as it should be for Utah, Arizona, California, and the other western states. The federal government can't own this land and then, you know, terrorize people that try to do legitimate ranching on it, as they did with Cliven Bundy. And then, of course, we need to deal with people like Representative Ilhan Omar, who lied her way into Congress, who has connections with terrorist groups, who makes speeches to terrorist groups, terrorist-connected groups, who's out there trashing Jews and Christians and trying to bring down the state of Israel. This is in Congress. You have somebody like that? So you need to support Freedom Watch. You need to support the Bundys. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, contribute to our cause, sign up, send this radio show, share it with others, because we need to educate the American people. I'm going to be back next week with another edition of Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. Until then, God bless you, God save America, and may God always be with us. Thank you for listening.